So you're thinking about moving to Dahlonega, Georgia. All right, we'll be doing a unique video here since I've been living in Dahlonega for about 15 years and in the area for about 20 years. I'll be diving into everything I've personally experienced here, at least as much as I possibly can, to give you an idea of what it would be like to live in Dahlonega if you're thinking about moving to the area. I'll be talking about how I made my move here, what's the same since I moved here in 2007, what's different, what surprised me, and everything from my personal experience that I think will help bring value to you if you are thinking about moving to Dahlonega. Hope you enjoy, and let's jump right into it. Hey everybody, my name is Tim Gibson and my channel is all about living in North Georgia. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Of course, if you're thinking about moving to North Georgia, please reach out. My contact info is right on the screen. All right, let's jump right into it. I'm gonna give you some history of why I moved to Dahlonega and how I even got here from Florida, all that good stuff. I grew up in Florida, and in 1999, I was right out of high school and I wanted to continue my music career. So there's a music school in Norcross, Georgia, which is a little closer to Atlanta. That's what brought me to the Atlanta area in '99. I originally moved to Alpharetta and then started gradually moving further north. After living in North Forsyth County in Cumming, Georgia for a few years, I decided to sell my property along with my wife. We wanted to get a little further out in the country to experience small town living, but also have good access to major highways, Georgia 400 being the closest major highway to Dahlonega. Ultimately, we decided on a piece of property, bought the property, built a house there, and have lived there ever since. Bought about 4 acres of property, bought another 2 acres, so we live on about 6 acres of property up there. One of the main reasons is that we wanted to have that small town feel, like I mentioned earlier. We wanted to stay semi-rural, but also have good access. We especially did not want to live in an HOA neighborhood. That was a big deal for us. Some people love that. Some people like that structure. We did not want that, so we wanted to live on our own property and kind of do our own thing. Really for us, having that property, being close to a cool little small town with shops and restaurants and local places to go was important to us. So that's what ultimately led us to make that decision. Another important factor for us was that I traveled a lot during the time when we originally bought our property. I was making weekly trips down to the Atlanta airport, which is just south of Atlanta. So being close to Georgia 400 that leads north and south down to Atlanta was very important to us. I get down to the Atlanta airport around hour 15 minutes with no traffic, maybe hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes with a lot of traffic. So not super close, but close enough to where I could get down there. It wasn't a major headache. I always planned ahead if I knew I was gonna have a morning flight, and I would just make sure I was leaving with plenty of extra time to account for traffic and all that stuff, and never really had an issue. Another important factor for us for living in Dahlonega is the outdoors. We love hiking, camping, fishing, all that good stuff. There's so much to do in a relatively close area to Dahlonega that you would have no end of things to enjoy outdoors. Some of my reflections, I guess is what you'd call it, of living here for the last 15 years. Lots of great memories in the outdoors, fishing with kids, trout fishing, going to Dick's Creek where the waterfall is. Recently, I took my boys and one of their friends out to the Appalachian Trail. We hung out, we hiked a little bit, and we got to see one of the good overlooks there. And what's really cool too is on some of these spots on the Appalachian Trail, you can actually see the skyline of Atlanta on a clear day, which is really cool. All of this is really pretty close to Dahlonega. I'd say maybe 30 minutes drive time, just depending on where you are. We really love to go tubing, hanging out on the river. The Chestatee River is right there at the end of Georgia 400. There are a couple of outfitters right there on the Chestatee River that offer tube rentals or kayak rentals, and you can get on the river and have a great time. One of the fun things my kids and I like to do during the summer, we did this a couple times this year, we like to rent some tubes, and it's about a 30-minute tube ride down to this rock. And the rock is right there by the stairs where you get out of the river, and you can do a loop. You hike back, you go tubing again, you can do as many times as you want. This big rock right there on the river where you get out is huge, and there's a pool right there at the bottom of it. So the kids like to tube to the rock, we climb up on the rock, jump off the rock, get into the cold water, and then they do that a bunch of times too. Plenty of really good, pretty cheap fun. You could do it all day, and it's a great time. Tubing down the river, a lot of great fun, of course, and jumping off that rock and splashing in that cold water on a hot day is awesome. Another thing we love to do is to go to the square in Dahlonega. There's always something going on in Dahlonega on the square, especially during the fall when I'm shooting this video. The fall is festival season in North Georgia. There's always something going on in just about every town on every weekend. Just on a whim, we decided to go to the square and see what was going on last weekend. And there was an Art in the Park event hosted by the Dahlonega Arts Alliance. So there was really cool. There's live music in Hancock Park. There were art vendors selling really cool stuff. We had no idea, but we went and there was lots of cool stuff to do. My daughter, she got a huge pumpkin and she also was decorating some pumpkins. So it was a really cool thing. Unexpected, but great. Another event too that happened just recently is called Gold Rush. And that's like the premier event in Dahlonega once a year. I believe it's in the third weekend of October every year. It's a huge event. Thousands of people come to it on the square. There's a parade, there's vendors, there's food, there's everything you'd ever want to do. It's awesome. We had a great time. Springtime, we have an event called Bear on the Square that happens every spring, commemorating a time when a black bear got on the loose in the square in Dahlonega. There's also the Arts and Wine Festival in Dahlonega. Also the old-fashioned Christmas where the town square is decorated in Christmas lights. It's awesome. All that being said, Dahlonega is a really, really cool, quaint, small town. It's something straight out of a Hallmark movie. If you're familiar with that, my wife loves Hallmark movies. So if you're familiar with the Hallmark movies, you'll know what I'm talking about. Okay, so let's talk about some of the surprises that I have experienced as living in Dahlonega. If you are from Dahlonega or you have been to Dahlonega or if you've stayed in Dahlonega for any period of time, you will know what I'm talking about. Biggest inconvenience, number one on probably a lot of people's list that live here, is that there are no real grocery stores in Dahlonega. It's a town of about 6,000 to 8,000 people and the whole county is about 30,000 to 33,000 people, I think. And our only grocery store is a Walmart. So you know what I'm talking about. Most of us want a real grocery store like a Publix, an Ingles, or Kroger, something. I think there might be something in the works, but I'm not quite sure. It could just be rumors. So if you're thinking about moving to the area, just know that you're gonna have to drive a little ways to get to a grocery store. Depending on where you are in the county, you could be driving 15, 20 minutes to Dawsonville to the south, or southeast to Gainesville, where they've got a couple of grocery stores pretty close by, about 20, 25 minutes away. Not terrible, but also not super convenient. This next inconvenience might be a little worse than not having a great grocery store in town. That is, parts of Dahlonega are in basically the internet at dark ages. I've lived here since 2007, and my internet connection is so terrible that it reminds me of having AOL dial-up in the 90s. I mean, for a long time, the best internet connection I could get was a 3 meg download internet connection. Horrible. It got so bad that I had to complain to Windstream, I complained to my state senator, anybody that would listen to me. Finally, I got an upgraded switch where I live. It got a little bit better. And there are some plans in place to provide fiber internet to the county. I don't know all the details about that, but I hope it comes to my house because this is 2022. Come on. Gotta have some good internet, people. All that being said, there are parts of the county that have great internet connections. From what I understand, there is a fiber line that runs up Georgia 400 and goes west into town. Of course, because we have a big college, University of North Georgia, in town, and they have a great internet connection. So I think all along Highway 60 going into town is pretty good. And there are pockets. I had a friend that lived over on the east side on Highway 60. He had a great internet connection. But where I live, internet black hole. It's a little better than it was, but not great. Another thing that some of the locals don't love is that a lot of people complain that the college has taken over Dahlonega and is buying up all the property. And if you spend any amount of time in Dahlonega, you'll notice just about everywhere there's some sort of University of North Georgia college building. I don't really mind. It's not that big of a deal to me. I think it's cool to have a college town. But some people don't love the idea that the college has basically taken over the town. Since Dahlonega is a small town and there's a lot of cool touristy things to do, during the fall season, whenever the leaves start to change and the weather cools off a little bit, the weekend outdoor tourism explodes. So we almost never have any traffic at all. But during the fall, the traffic is crazy. People are coming up usually from the Atlanta area or somewhere down near the suburbs, and they're wanting to get away and get in the mountains a little bit on the weekend. Not that big of a deal. Just be prepared if you're thinking about moving up here during the fall season on the weekends. Expect a lot of people just from all over. This next one's kind of interesting, and I didn't really understand anything about this until I moved here, but people who are born and raised are called nuggets, like Gold Nugget. So if you're an outsider, if you've moved in from somewhere else, or if you've relocated, you won't be a Nugget ever because you were not born and raised here. Now, that's not that big of a deal. It's just a thing, so just be aware of that. It's not like if you're not a Nugget and you walk into a restaurant, the record's gonna scratch and then the whole place is gonna turn around and stare at you like in the movies. But there is a little bit of pride in people who are born and raised here being called a Nugget. So just be aware of that. As far as development goes, there's a bit of a dividing line since it's such a small population with a lot of locals. Some people want more development. Because I'm not a local here, I love the nature, I love everything about living in a small town, but I think a little bit of development would be great for the area. A lot of locals want it to stay as natural as possible, as small as possible, but hey, to each their own. That being said, there is a Gateway Corridor Overlay District, is what the Planning and Zoning Committee calls it, right there along Georgia 400 and then right there at the intersection of Highway 60. There is a new Northeast Georgia Medical Center hospital. It's going to be the hub of the new development that's happening right there at the end of Georgia 400. And with that hospital will come, of course, new staff, hospital staff. There will also be some new development around the hospital, potentially some shops and restaurants and stuff like that. And hopefully a grocery store. So if you're thinking about moving to Dahlonega, Georgia, always give me a call. My contact info is below. Or any of the surrounding areas, please leave me a comment. I'd be happy to answer that for you. Have a great day, and thank you so much for watching. And of course, we will see you on the next video.